Welcome to the Sunshine Junkie podcast. Part genius, part ridiculous, but all Florida. Now your host, Chad Crawford and Katie Schroeder.
We're set to pop here. Make sure I'm in focus this time, Kelly. I like me a little soft. Well, you know, Katie, I get people who send me a lot of stuff. You know, I get stuff in the mail.
You do.
Necklaces and flip-flops. And anytime anybody starts a new Florida brand, I typically get kind of a welcome kit. So I have a pretty good pile of stuff. So this
What you got over there?
Something that just came recently. Florida Crossings.
Ooh, a book.
J. Eddie Edwards.
J. Eddie Edwards.
Yeah. I don't know Mr. Edwards, but he has sent me this book. I haven't cracked this. Oh, he actually did sign it. I just saw that.
Huh.
Chad, thank you for your inspiring work for your beloved state. Wish you the best, Eddie.
That is sweet.
Well, thank you, Eddie.
How often do you read a book?
Not a lot. And my wife loves to read, and she is like just chewing through books.
It is hard to have time to sit down uninterrupted and read a book.
But this looks so good, and I want to read it. I maybe there's an audio of this, or maybe he can read it to me. I don't know. So
Let me see.
It's like a good Florida read.
Let's see here. Let's see what we got here. You didn't even.
If you are a reader, go check it out. It looks really good. It feels good. It's got good weight to it. You know.
There's someone in here named Chad.
What, a character?
It's underneath a chapter called Ice Cream Man.
Yeah.
That doesn't quite sound like you.
I used to think about owning an ice cream truck. There was a time in my life where I thought that would be pretty cool.
Ooh. Let's hear. I'm going to read in a bit.
You can read me an excerpt?
I wait for us to walk through the brass doors to these establishments. We would get free lap dances because Chad is everyone's pimp or kingpin. However that works. Lap dance after lap dance, I would witness women rotating in and out. They would see Chad in a back room on a zebra or cheetah patterned couch. A different woman would enter the room every 20
Shut up. That's not in that book. Let me see that.
That sounds spicy. J. Eddie Edwards.
Now I'm going to have to read it. Wow. Good job.
Chad the Ice Cream Man.
That's crazy. That's in there.
Yeah.
And that you just found it. You just... Hopefully that's the only piece in here about me.
It's not you.
Okay. Well, gosh, today's a special day.
It really is. I'm so excited.
This person has inspired us, but so many others. We're going to hear her story, and some of it's pretty tough. It's difficult to hear.
It's one worth hearing. And she was one of the first people that we thought of when we thought about doing the podcast.
And so you actually found her and her family during season 12, right?
We wanted to do an ultimate fan experience for season 12, where we would cast people, couples, families, individuals to be a part of the show, in which you would kind of curate an experience for them. And they would come join you at a destination, and they would get to do Florida.
Well, doing production with people is an intimate thing, and some people you get to know better than others. And I know you're really good about keeping up with all of our guests and people who are on our shows, but some people just leave a lasting impact that just is undeniable. And this person is definitely one of those people.
Karen just has an amazing story, and that's why she's here today.
Let's welcome Karen Adam to the podcast.
So thank you so much for joining us. And we're going to talk about a lot of stuff today. How do you feel about that?
I'm a little nervous.
Yeah.
Just because, it's my life, and, there's a lot to unpack there. Good, bad, and otherwise.
We were doing season 12 where we wanted to reach out and find the ultimate How to Do Florida fans and bring them on the journey. I think we had kind of felt like people were sick of seeing me doing it, and we're like, okay, let's see some other people
You were going through a crisis, I think, in yourself. You're like, people are sick of seeing me. I don't need to be a host anymore. Let's put other people on television. I don't know what you were going through.
We're glad you went with that decision, too, for the record.
I'm trying to back out of my job. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You wanted to be behind the camera a little bit more. Maybe just lay off your duties a little bit.
Whose idea was it to submit?
Oh, it was definitely my husband, Gabe's.
Okay.
Yeah, Gabe was like, hey, they got this. Do you guys think we should do it? And we were all like, oh, okay, I guess we should.
So take me back to the show. We went to Tampa. Like, what are some things you remember from that?
So we went to Tampa, and I think the first thing that we did was we went on this pirate boat tour down the river, which was really fun. The guy who ran the tour was hilarious.
They always are.
He told pirate jokes, and it was just really funny. But he also gave a lot of information about Tampa, which was kind of cool as we were driving or riding on the boat. And then we went to the river walked around there some. I think that's when we met up with you.
Yes.
Or we definitely had kind of a fangirl moment. We were all so excited to actually meet you on this river walk.
Yeah.
We went to, Gabe and I went and rolled cigars. That was kind of cool.
Yes.
And the best part about that is we got to see a live video of them rolling cigars in Nicaragua. Where Gabe is from.
Yeah.
Right.
That was just kind of a crazy pseudo coincidental
kind of a thing. Yeah.
The kids went to Cereal Holics.
That's what I remember.
That was
place
funny.
looked awesome.
And in the storyline of the show, Chad wanted to give you guys some time to yourself.
He did.
So he decided to take the kids to the most sugary place in Ybor City, which was Cereal Holics. Yes. And I just remember being there and seeing these
massive
crazy
milkshakes.
And your kids were just like, yeah.
You know what's funny though is I think our kids were, but I think Chad was too.
That place was crazy. I mean, it was so much to look at inside there. I was just like, where are we? Like, what is this?
Yeah, it definitely was like a 1980s throwback.
I mean, somebody had a dream and woke up and just decided to like transform this building into.
It's so niche. I do wonder if it's still there.
Oh, I hope so.
I do too.
I don't know. COVID might have.
Yeah.
But it was a cool little place. It was kind of different. Yeah. So the kids had a great time there. Let's see, what else did we do? We went zip lining. That was fun.
That was the main. That was
the big one.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was fun though.
I remember that image of the sun going down. Were you guys on that swing bridge, going across that swing bridge? That was really cool.
Yeah, I think that was a good special moment for our family.
Yeah.
Like, just kind of a sweet moment.
I remember I was really wanting Gabe to fall. I told Gabe, I was like, man, I really need to fall for the show.
We need the drama. You needed some sort of drama.
And he's like,
and of course you're making the dad's got to do it.
Dad's got to do it.
Well, I think he offered it to a couple of us, and the rest of us were like, no.
You're like, sorry.
Not so much. Not happening today.
And
barely making it across that bridge.
Well, you guys are an active family. You're always out there looking for something to do in Florida. So you had an incident happen to you that really has had tremendous impact on your life.
So we bought a hurricane deck boat. It was perfect for the four of us. Yeah. I mean, we could take a few people out, but really it was kind of just for the four of us to experience being out on the water. So that particular day, it was a summer day. It was July 8th. Mm-hmm. We had worked all day. The kids had been home all day. And so we thought, we'll get off work early. We'll take them out on the river. It'll just be a nice little evening out. So we picked them up. Got the boat out of the Lake Monroe Marina and started up the river. And we were headed towards Blue Springs is where we were headed.
Beautiful up there.
Yeah. And it was just a nice boat ride. It was like the perfect weather. You couldn't have asked for a better day.
Was there a lot of traffic on the river? Okay.
No, surprisingly, it was pretty calm out.
Yeah.
We actually thought about stopping at Gators for dinner. And there were a couple boats there, and we still weren't super confident in parking our boat at docks. So we decided that was not the best option. Yeah. We'll just head back to the marina. Unfortunately, on the way back, another boat kind of crossed our path, and we hit their wake pretty straight on. Not crazy amount of wake, but just enough.
Yeah.
I lifted about a few inches off the seat. And when I came down, I no longer could feel my legs. I knew immediately that I had broke my back. And I looked at Gabe right then and said, I think I just broke my back. I can't feel my legs at all. Gosh. And I think at first he thought that seemed absolutely crazy because it wasn't anything extreme that had happened.
And now, were you in the front of the boat?
I was in the front.
Okay.
I was in the front with my daughter Soledad. We were sitting right next to each other. Gabe was driving the boat, and Gabriel was, I think, in the seat next to him or like right behind him. He was in the back of the boat. But nothing happened to my daughter. I mean, so really just kind of a freak accident. But that meant that we had to get the rest of the way back to the marina from where we were.
Were you in pain?
Yes and no. So I was definitely feeling the pain, especially if I moved any. But I was also very calm. I was talking to the kids and talking to Gabe the same way I'm talking to you.
Yeah.
Just very even keel. I'm actually the one who talked to the 911 operator and told them, like, I need rescue to meet us there. I think I just broke my back. I'm sure she probably thought I was crazy. There was no way someone was this calm and had such a catastrophic injury.
And so in that moment, you can't feel your legs. What is that like?
It's just it's weird. I don't even know how to describe it. It's worse than when your legs fall asleep, because at least then you know they're going to eventually wake up. It just felt completely numb, just like they weren't even there. And even when I tried to like move to a different position to see if like, oh, maybe they'll wake up, like, they wouldn't hold me. Like I ended up eventually being down into like the floor of the boat by the time that we got back to the marina. But I mean, there was just no sensation, no feeling.
And then also, you realize there is the disconnect between like your brain, like being able to not say like, move.
Right. You want to wiggle your toes and you're not wiggling your toes.
You're like, what the hell?
Yeah. Yeah.
It was terrifying.
It was. And yet at the same time, you want to kind of protect that part. So you're also like, I don't want to go to the extreme that this is bad.
You mean in your mind?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't want to let my mind travel to like, this is going to be bad. I just kind of hoped it was like a temporary, like, oh, you kind of threw your back out a little and they just kind of, you go to the chiropractor, they crack it, and the next thing you know, you're fine.
So the full extent of your injury wasn't apparent at the time.
No.
You were thinking this could be just something that you would kind of come out of.
Yeah.
They would give you an injection, they would do something, and you would be able to regain feeling in your legs.
Yeah, I kind of thought maybe it was going to be like a pinched nerve kind of thing.
Yeah.
Where like the disc slips a little bit, there's a little pinched nerve, they kind of shave the disc off a little, and voila, you're all better. Because I've known people that's happened to. So I kind of just thought the same thing. Like, this is just a temporary setback. Never thought this would be a permanent injury.
Well, I know when Gabe described this to me, I was just in disbelief, because anybody who's been on the water has had that exact same scenario happen to them hundreds, if not thousands of times. When you think back to that day, is there anything that, like how you were sitting, or is it just a freak accident?
No, they kind of said later that it really was just a freak accident, that my spine was just stacked in the right way, in the right moment, and the impact was just at the right amount. But I know that was something that Gabe asked a lot of people right after the accident.
Yeah.
Every person that ever came into the like hospital room or that he talked to on the phone, he's like, you have a boat? You've been on a boat? You've hit wakes before?
Yeah.
Like, I think he needed to rationalize that this is really a freak accident, that it's not something that happens.
Yeah. I have never heard of this happening, or there would be stickers on boats from lawyers saying, do not sit here when the boat is underway, and, do not ride this over a wake.
Even on like roller coasters, you see that like, if you have a previous back injury, don't do this. And that was something everyone asked us too. Like, did I have a previous back injury? Had I already had something that was made my spine weaker? And the unfortunate answer is no.
No.
I didn't have anything that should have given us this idea that this would ever happen.
So you're heading back to the Sanford Marina there. The EMT is on their way. Kind of take us from there.
Okay, so unfortunately, the EMTs were awful.
Wow.
Oh, no.
Awful. I don't know if they just didn't believe me or what, but they at first were like, oh, you need to get off the boat. We can't help you unless you get off the boat. And I tried to explain.
Wait, what? So I guess legally or whatever, they can't get on your boat and help you?
I don't know, but they were like, you got to get off the boat. And I said, well, I can't get off the boat. That's why I called you.
That's wild.
Then when I couldn't get off the boat and they finally decided they would get on the boat and help, this is going to make you really unhappy when I tell you the rest of the story.
Oh, God.
They actually just pushed me backwards. So pushed me back.
Onto what?
Into like a net. They never put me on a backboard. They never put us like collar, nothing. It was kind of like a net and just carried me in like this net.
I've seen them put those neck collars on people who've like stubbed their toe or rolled their ankle. I mean, like to not put that on you in that situation seems just wild.
Yeah. There was never a backboard, never a neck collar at any point. Even once we got to the ambulance and I was put onto a stretcher, I was still put in almost like a sitting position, like no pain meds, no anything.
I'm so sorry.
It was probably the worst ambulance experience. And I've had, like you said, I've had much less things.
They're quick to put that stuff on you, I feel like.
And yet nothing. Fortunately, the hospital did fully buy into this is a problem.
Yeah.
So I did go straight into a trauma area. Okay. And they were prepared to deal with the injury.
So at what point, Karen, do you realize like how severe this injury is?
I think I still didn't fully grasp it until I was even in the ICU. I do know that the trauma area seemed really crazy. One of my most vivid memories is them cutting my clothes off. Mostly because I had a brand new dress and a brand new bra.
Oh, damn it.
And I could not believe they just sliced right through it.
You're like, wow.
I did ask them not to do so. They didn't care what I asked.
Yeah, you're like, it's probably for them.
I do remember that's really when a lot of the pain set in.
Yeah.
Even more so than being on the boat. A lot of the pain set in once I was kind of, I guess, in a protected space now.
I mean, do you think you were just like adrenaline and shock?
100%.
Okay. 100%. And it was wearing off.
Yes. Yeah. I think now that I was in like a safe space.
You were releasing.
I was releasing because I was starting to really feel that pain at that. I am terrified of MRI machines. I'm very claustrophobic. So I do remember telling them like, I can't get in this machine. And again, they were kind of like, well, you can't really go anywhere. So in the machine, you're going.
Can you knock me out of a seat?
But yeah, that was, again, I don't think I still fully realized that I was not going to get out in a few days.
What are the doctors telling you? Are they telling you anything?
I don't remember them really telling me much of anything. I know I was pretty knocked out in the ICU. I don't really remember much of coming in and out of that in the ICU.
How long were you in ICU or how long were you in the hospital?
So I was in ICU, I think at least, I don't know, I would say like a week or so. And then they moved me to another room. Okay. I know when I had both of my back surgeries, I was in ICU.
Yeah.
Because I actually had to have 2 surgeries. So the first surgery had to happen within 48 hours or I most likely wouldn't have made it.
You most likely wouldn't have made it.
Yeah. As in the injury was severe enough that I had to have that first surgery within 48 hours.
And what exactly happened? What was the break?
It was a burst fracture of my L1 vertebrae. So my vertebrae actually burst and impacted my spinal cord when it did.
Jesus.
So they had to go in and pull the fragments of that vertebrae out and put a cage in to replace where my vertebrae was. And then they had to go back 2 days later and actually do a fusion and put a plate with screws over it to kind of protect it.
So you had 2 surgeries in the hospital.
Yes.
You leave the hospital. What's that like to leave the hospital and go home? I assume you're in a wheelchair.
Well, I didn't go home.
Okay.
So after ICU, I got moved to a floor and I stayed there for about another week or so while they were trying to find me an inpatient rehab. So I actually wasn't going to go home. I had to go to a place to try and get me at least being able to do some things. Because at this point, I still couldn't even sit up by myself. I couldn't brush my hair. I couldn't bathe. I couldn't do anything myself because everything in my back just hurt so bad I couldn't move.
So you couldn't brush your hair. So it was affecting even more so than just below the waist.
Yes.
It was using your arms.
Yes. Even using my arms was hard. Like I couldn't pull myself anywhere. I couldn't reach the top of my head. Feeding myself wasn't too bad, but that was probably about the extent. Anything higher than about your mouth, I couldn't really do.
And were you still around home or did you have to go anywhere else?
Yeah. So I ended up leaving from the hospital in Sanford, and I left and went to Brooks in Jacksonville. So there were two choices for me. Brooks in Jacksonville was one, and then there was a hospital in Atlanta was the other choice. So it was going to be one of those two that whoever was willing to take me.
Yeah.
And fortunately, Brooks was able to take me because at least that's not too far of a drive for my family to make back and forth.
Right.
Surgeries, different hospitals, rehab facilities, like give us a picture. How are you doing mentally? Like, how are you handling all this?
So the one thing is they always make you make goals when you get to each level of care.
Yeah.
And every goal, I said, I want to walk again. I want to walk again. I want to walk again.
Because to be clear, like at this point, you can't walk.
I cannot walk. I can't move the limbs at all. Like I had one moment where I had a little tiny twitch in my thigh. And I think we all thought that was, a God miracle situation.
Yeah. Like, hell yes.
Yes, there's a twitch.
Yes.
But I'm still not moving anything. Right. Nothing is happening. But I just kept saying like, I want to walk again. I want to walk again. Yeah. And I think they were looking for smaller goals. Like, I'd like to be able to put my shoe on or be able to kick my foot,
You're like,
brush your teeth.
Right. Yeah. Brush my teeth, brush my hair. Yeah. But I knew if I just kept that, I want to walk again mantra, it would get me through. Have you ever seen the movie Kill Bill?
Yes.
Okay. So Kill Bill was like my inspiration for life. At the beginning where she's like, she gets into the back of the car and she's like, oh, I just got to wiggle my big toe.
Yes.
I just kept telling myself, you just got to wiggle your big toe. Because I knew that if I could wiggle my big toe, then maybe I could like move my foot. Yeah. And if I could move my foot, then maybe I could move my knee. And I just kind of kept this mantra of like one baby step, but I got to walk again.
I mean, that's the big goal. But are you having moments where that goal feels unobtainable?
Yes, every day. I mean, there were so many tools utilized to try and get me walking.
Yeah.
I mean, there's videos when you watch and like my foot's barely swinging. Like it takes every effort to get like a tiny little swing. It takes every effort to just move a little bit to the right or a little bit to the left. Every movement hurt.
Well, and some of that technology is incredible.
My gosh.
That they use.
I can't believe all of that machinery it's so specific to such little things. And I'm so grateful it exists to have that specific machinery for people so that they can learn to walk or to move, whatever their goal is. Like, it's insane.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was really impressed with a lot of the stuff that Brooks had. They had things that they could put you in that would help like lift you into a stand that then they could take you out and kind of roll with you while you attempted to take steps. So at the beginning, they were really like moving my feet for me just to kind of try and work that muscle memory back. That if my brain could connect that, hey, we want this foot to move, then maybe eventually the foot would move. But it started with very small things. I thought I would walk out of Brooks. Walking. It did not happen.
Yeah.
But I kept that in the back of my head. Like
well, that's how determined you were.
I was determined. And I think a lot of it came down to, I try to think about the future things. Like I want to dance with my son at his wedding. Yeah. I want to be able to go finish hiking the Appalachian Trail with my husband, Gabe, like I want to do all these things that I just kind of would picture those things in my head of I have to walk in order to do.
Do you ever get mad?
A lot. I think especially when things would happen that weren't what you wanted them to happen. So there were a lot of issues that come with being paralyzed. And so like bowel bladder issues were very hard to deal with. They were very maddening. Those were some of my most angry moments. Also, when you're in rehab, you do have a lot of downtime and you watch a lot of TV. And for some reason, the show Ridiculousness was on all the time. And so I'd get mad when I'd watch people on that show doing absolutely stupid things and not get hurt. And then I'd be mad that here I wasn't doing anything stupid. I've probably done much more stupid things in my life. And yet here I was, I'm the one in the bed paralyzed. And so I did have a lot of like angry moments. I had angry moments with friends that just decided this was too much for them to deal with. So they didn't want to call. They didn't want to be there.
Do you think it's people just don't quite know what to do?
I don't know. I think sometimes you start seeing true colors of where your friendship really lies. I think you do. I know you reached out to me at one point and you're like, hey, what can I do? And I said, if you could just take Gabe somewhere and do something with him, that would actually be the best benefit you could do. You know, but you really still didn't know us super well at that point.
Right.
You know, but you reached out. And I think that's where it was like, okay, when you have somebody who doesn't know you that well and really reaches out, it really puts in perspective the people who you thought were good friends who didn't reach out. And you might be right. Maybe it was hard for them, but at the same time, you hope that you're not that person. You hope that you're the person who reaches out.
Well, let's jump ahead a little bit here. You know, let's talk about what I think was really crazy when I heard you guys were doing this, considering what you were going through. And I know you guys go to Oktoberfest every year.
While I was in rehab, we were talking about this big trip we still had planned that was only going to be about 3 months after the accident.
I mean, considering your situation, that seemed like a bad idea.
Yeah, I think everyone thought it was a bad idea.
Like Oktoberfest in Germany?
Like Oktoberfest in Germany. Oh. Yeah, I think everybody thought it was a bad idea. I was lucky enough that I had one doctor who was like, go if you want to go.
Sounds like fun.
You only live once, right?
You only live once. But other than her and I think Gabe and I, everybody else thought we were crazy.
I mean, what was in your head? What was the rationale for going for you?
The rationale for me was that if we don't go, I'm giving up on life.
Wow.
It really came down to this is the make it or break it point. If we don't go, I'm saying I am accepting this, that this is going to be the way that my life is going to be. I'm going to be in a wheelchair and I'm just going to be okay with being at home and doing nothing. So we had to go. We had to go because I needed to know that life wasn't over and I needed to know that we could still do all the fun adventure things that we had done.
That you could control it. It wouldn't control you.
Yes. It really did come down to that.
Yeah. There was also a moment, because I've watched a lot of your videos yesterday. I went like through all of them on YouTube. Like there was a really emotional moment too of your first transfer on the plane.
Oh, so the plane transfer is very tough. You have to get from your wheelchair into this tiny little transfer chair.
Because it has to go through the aisle, right?
Through the aisle of the plane. And then they have to get you into the seat. And mind you, these people aren't really trained to do these maneuvers.
Right.
I kind of felt like a circus act almost, that everybody was watching me, even though there was literally nobody on the plane.
Yeah.
It was just us. But I really did have this emotional breakdown of, this is what I'm going to deal with. This is the life that I'm going to deal with. And I cried a lot in that moment. And then, of course, we were looking at the second plane where it was an overnight flight. I mean, we're talking hours on a plane. Yeah. And again, I'm still having bladder issues at this point. Yeah. We were very fortunate that we had this steward, though, who was a very strong German man who, when it came time to go to the bathroom, he's like, I will just pick you up. And he just lifted and moved me before there was a moment of like, I don't think this is a good idea. So we did have that, and that made it kind of humorous and relaxing a little bit. But yeah, everything else was, leaving the airport, trying to get into a taxi for the first time, because I'm still learning how to get in and out of vehicles.
Yeah. That board that you have to like.
Right. And yet here I am with this random taxi. The door doesn't open the way I want it to. They don't quite understand. They're like, just get in the car. And we're like, I can't just get in the car.
Well, and like you're having to explain to people like, I haven't been this way for this long.
Right.
I'm still a new paraplegic person.
Right. So all of that is like it's playing a part into this as well. So we get to the hotel that we know is not handicap accessible, but it is right across the street from Oktoberfest. But just to get inside the hotel, it was like a flight of stairs.
Get up. Yeah.
And it was rainy in Germany, so like wet stairs. I thought I'd be able to walk up the stairs. Not so much. I thought I'd be able to maybe like crawl up the stairs, but they were so disgustingly dirty and wet. That wasn't an option.
But what is your mobility at this point? I mean, you can't walk, right?
At all.
Right.
No.
So why did you think you could walk up these stairs?
I have no idea, Chad.
You were just going to like wheel it?
Walk. At this point, maybe I can just do it.
Well, at this point, I've been doing outpatient therapy, and we had worked on like chair to floor transfers because she knew I was going.
Yeah.
So she's like, I want you to have some like ability to do something. So we did like, chair to floor, floor to chair. We did kind of work on like maybe attempting some stairs, and I was kind of pulling myself up. So in my head, I thought this will be easy.
Yeah.
Piece of cake. Not so much. As soon as I looked at the stairs, I was like, there's no way. Not going to happen. So that meant someone had to lift the wheelchair with me in it, multiple people, into this hotel.
Wow.
Which was super humbling and super tough. I mean, we were fortunate, though. The Germans are very handicap friendly. At Oktoberfest itself, they have bathrooms that are locked and kept just for handicapped people. They will kick people out of tables to make space for somebody who's handicapped. So overall, the experience was amazing, and I'm so glad we did it. I have no regrets.
Drink some good beer.
We drank some great beer, probably more beer than we should have. But again, I was sitting in a chair, so I never had to walk anywhere. So there was that positive side to it as well.
Yeah.
Overall, it was a great trip until the last night when the elevator in the hotel broke. And now there was zero option because our room was on the 3rd floor. So we're not talking like one small little couple steps. I had to figure out how to get up to the hotel room and back down with a broken elevator.
Wow.
So they actually went into the bar and pulled out a couple of guys from the bar. They offered them free drinks if they would come help them. And so Gabe and these couple guys from the bar carried me and the wheelchair up 3 sets of flights of stairs. And then when it came time to leave, that was probably one of the first moments that I really felt strong and independent, is I actually came down the stairs on my butt by myself. Very emotional, very tiring, but
just sliding, boom, boom,
one step at a time.
One step at a time on your butt.
On my butt.
Wow.
But it was actually kind of empowering. It was kind of one of those moments where I felt I have some control.
Yeah.
I have control.
Yeah. And up until that moment, you had no control. Everybody was doing everything for you. I mean, you were sitting in a wheelchair, people were lifting the chair, and now you've got some semblance of control, even though if I was to look at you, it didn't look like you were in control, but to you, it felt like you had some control.
Yeah. It did. It felt very empowering.
Well, and then going from not being able to brush your hair to lifting your body down 3 flights of stairs, I mean, that in itself just shows how much stronger you got and how much mobility in yourself you had gained over how much time that had been.
So from that stair moment to the accident, what was the time frame?
Not quite 3 months. Quite 3 months.
So this is still very new.
Very new. Very new.
Well, so coming off that trip, empowering, like glad you went, like what did you get from that trip?
I think I got this sense that was just the beginning.
Yeah.
Like that was going to be the first of many things that we were going to do. I started my therapy at Core almost as soon as we came back. And I really just like turned the knob. I flipped the switch and said, okay, that was an amazing trip. I felt so good that is just going to be the first. It's going to be the first.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your relationship with your husband. You know, I mean, a tragic situation like this in the family can go a couple different ways when it comes to your relationship with your spouse. How important is he to all of this?
Oh, I mean, probably the most important thing. I'm in quite a few different spinal cord injury groups, and I would say the overwhelming majority, their spouse doesn't stay with them. I would say the overwhelming majority is divorce because they can't handle it. And yet, one of the hardest things that happened with him is that in the hospital, I actually asked him, like, are you going to leave me? And I think he thought I was crazy for even asking, but it was one of those things that I needed to hear the answer. I felt like I knew the answer, but I needed to hear the answer. And I would say not a day's gone by that he hasn't lived up to every vow he made to me. And the things that he's had to do and the things that he's had to go through are just more than I think most people would ever ask their spouse to do.
Yeah, I would agree. Well, I know he's your biggest fan. He's your champion. He's your trainer. He's your camera guy. He films everything. He's filming right over there right now.
We actually started filming when I was in the ICU when I said, this is not what I want. I do not want to be on camera.
Well, there was a series where you were in the shower.
Oh my gosh.
And, you know, he was showing how you couldn't get in the shower and now you can.
Filming every moment.
Filming you in the shower.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, he came up with this crazy idea. He was like, you're going to put on a bathing suit.
Right.
And we're going to show people what the shower's like.
Did I see that was the one that had the most views?
I think it had the most shares as well. Saves.
Like hundreds of thousands of views and the most shares. Well done, Karen. Well done, my girlfriend.
That have over 1 million views.
Yeah.
Wow.
But they're my walking videos.
Yeah.
They're my
There you
first
go.
step videos.
Yeah.
Oh,
Have over 1 million views.
heck yeah.
There have been so many moments that I thank God that he did it.
He was filming.
Yeah, because I've been able to look back and really see like, wow,
Yeah.
that's where I was and that's where I'm at.
Yeah.
Especially in those dark moments when the dark creeps in, I'll go back and watch videos.
Yeah.
And I just am so thankful that he thought he had that mindset to record because
Yeah.
I wouldn't have that. And I would probably live more in the dark than I do.
At what point do you guys see this as an opportunity to inspire others?
So we had a lot of discussions about that. And one of the things that Gabe said from the beginning is he said, I have to believe that God allowed this to happen for a good reason to come from it. And that if we can just try to look for that good,
Yeah.
it'll help us deal with the fact that the tragedy occurred.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that just kind of helped us look for that. If I can inspire others, if I can give hope to others, then maybe this wasn't all for bad.
Yeah.
Maybe there is some good that can come out of it.
It's somewhere along the way you decide to get back outdoors.
Yeah.
You were already outdoorsy. This had kind of put a pause on that. At what point were you like, yeah, I want to go back out and do these things that you were doing before the accident?
So this would definitely be a credit for Gabe to start with. So he he's found this group, Oceans of Hope, who does accessible kayaking, accessible surfing. They do accessible parasailing. And he's like, I'm just going to go do the volunteer training with them. I said, okay, well, I'm not ready to get on the water. I mean, my accident happened on water, so
Yeah.
not sure that this is really the best place for me to be.
Yeah.
But the long and short is he finally convinced me to sign up for an accessible kayaking trip.
Yeah.
And I was terrified.
Mm.
I mean, the fear in my eyes, I'm like pinching my ears, hoping that I can get endorphins going. I was terrified.
Terrified of what?
Terrified that a boat might come and there be a wake. It was absolutely irrational.
Wow.
We were in kind of a protected area where there's pretty much only kayaks.
Yeah.
But the irrational thoughts started seeping in of like,
It's like
post-traumatic.
It's like post-traumatic stress.
Yes.
You're just like, oh my God, this is where it happened. I'm right back here again.
It
like,
was.
It's totally
It was.
a rational fear, I would say.
It felt so irrational though. It felt in the back of my head, I'm like, this is absolutely stupid.
Mm.
I'm like a few inches off the water. Like, even if I fell out, what could happen? But at the same time, I'm thinking, I still don't have full use of my legs. Could I even swim if like I fell out? Like, so all these things are in my head of how is this going to work? And yet here are all these wonderful volunteers who have been fully trained on how to get people in and out of a kayak, how to save you if you fall out of the kayak. And they're there literally paddling right next to you. Like nothing is going to happen, but those fears seeped in.
Yeah.
But I did it.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I had the time of my life.
Yeah.
I had the time of my life.
Well, that started a journey for you because you went from where'd you go next?
So I think after I went kayaking the first time, I might have kayaked a couple more times before I finally did the surfing.
That was crazy.
The biggest thing about this first time I went surfing is it was the anniversary of the accident.
Mm.
It was July 8th, 1 year later.
Mm.
Which was totally coincidental that was the date that was chosen. And I had decided that I wasn't going to spend my SCI anniversary sitting at home and wallowing. I was going to do something active outside, reinvigorating the old Karen, finding that old side of being out and doing Florida.
Yeah. Well, I know my wife's an occupational therapist, and she develops a relationship with these people. When you're working that close with somebody in those very intimate, very personal moments, I mean, you really develop a bond.
You do. You find this love with them almost, where it's just this whole other level of relationship.
Yeah.
Where they're as much invested as you are. I mean, assuming you have the right therapist.
Right.
And I was fortunate that I did.
Yeah.
I had the right therapist. At each level, I was given just amazing people put into my life.
Coming off this accident, you guys have created a Facebook page, Beyond Adapting. What is Beyond Adapting?
It is a place to really inspire others to go beyond what they would be able to do. Really to inspire, to encourage, and to share. I have a hard time really sharing the hard moments. I like to share the happy moments. But
what does that word adapting mean to you?
I think it ultimately means finding what works now.
Yeah.
Finding what works now, because it may not be the same. I'll never walk the same way that I walked before. I may not be able to do many of the things that I used to be able to do, but it's adapting and finding a way. It's finding a way to make those things work and being able to kind of overcome and move forward.
So where are you now? Like, give us a picture of what is your range of motion? What is your mobility now?
So once I really started finding some mobility, we discovered that I was like on my tippy toes as like a ballerina. So I actually started learning how to walk kind of on my toes.
Like Barbie feet. I remember
Barbie feet. Yes.
Feet. Yeah.
Yes. We called them Barbie feet. And it's funny because most people that have like Barbie feet, they can still maneuver the foot. Mine were literally locked like a plastic doll Barbie.
Wow.
And just in a down position.
Where
you couldn't, like, you would normally stand, your foot would be like this.
Yeah, no, I was like that 100% all the time. It was crazy. And it really started causing more problems. So I did end up finding a surgeon here in Lake Mary that I also believe was a godsend. because of the craziness of how I found him. But we walked into his office and he's like, I can do this. I wrote a whole paper on it.
Wow.
He wrote a paper on it? He
wrote-
hadn't done the surgery before?
He's done it numerous times, but he had written like this whole paper and was like, oh yeah,
He's
I
published.
got this. We're like, oh, you're the guy. So he actually went in and made both my feet flat now. He moved a tendon that's supposed to pull your feet in, and he moved it to the top of my foot, and now it pulls my feet up.
Wow.
So I actually have 2 flat feet now, which is so much easier to walk than
Yes, of course.
And I have gotten to the point that I can walk without anything,
Wow.
but for really shorter periods of times,
Yeah.
and only in places that I consider like safe spaces.
Mhm.
So like work, home, church, but really not many other places. And then other than that, I use one forearm crutch.
So you walked in here.
I did.
So elevator up. And
Elevator
then,
up.
Then walked from the elevator
To here. Yep.
Yeah, that's not too far of a walk.
Yeah, and I use the arm crutch everywhere. So walking the mall, going shopping. I do drive now, which is exciting.
Oh, wow.
So I can drive myself places. I actually went full shopping, driving trip on my own last week, which
Wow.
was exciting.
Yeah.
No kids, no husband. It was great.
Just alone by yourself. That's always just lovely.
But it was nice to just, I don't often get to do a lot of things, or I often don't do things by myself.
Yeah.
Right.
It is comforting having him there, having one of the kids there, just as
Sure.
like that extra support.
Yeah.
Was there a moment that you thought, okay, I can do this. I can walk again?
Yeah, I think it was actually the belief that my trainers at Core, Matt and Mark, really put into me. I think Gabe believed all along, but I think when they got on board too, I think that was like a defining moment of, okay, besides my husband,
Yeah.
somebody else believes it's going to happen. And I remember the first time that Matt said to me that we were going to walk without anything. And I didn't really understand what he meant. I kind of still thought we were going to like use a walker. And that was not what he had planned. He fully was convinced that like that was the day I was going to take my first steps.
Wow. And do you have footage of that?
I do.
I watched it. Yes.
I do. And it's one of the most magical moments. Everybody cried. Gabe cried, I cried, Matt cried, everybody in the gym was clapping. And I think it was really a moment that kind of, I don't know, it defined everything. And I know it encouraged at least one woman, because from that moment, she changed her therapy too.
Wow.
And I think, I think for her, it was the defining moment. Watching me take those steps, it became her goal to take those steps.
What do you want people to learn, to take away from your situation?
I think the biggest thing is to not give up life. To not give up. Find how you can still do all the things that you love.
Yeah.
So I found ways to do many of the things that I loved doing before. And I think that's the biggest thing that I can give to somebody is you cannot sit at home and wallow and let the dark creep in.
When you were in those dark moments, like what helped get you out of that?
I think getting outside.
Yeah.
I think getting outside. I think once you're outside and you're feeling that fresh air, you start breathing life back in.
Yeah.
The first time we went snorkeling after, it was so freeing.
Yeah.
And so just life-giving. And I think people don't necessarily realize how much fresh air can do for you.
Well, and something I always felt like that being outdoors put things in perspective. You felt so small. The world felt so big. Your problems became a little smaller. And it just kind of helped, put things in perspective.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. And I think you can allow yourself to think. You can allow yourself to wander.
Yeah.
And I think some of that's valuable too. I found getting in the pool, going swimming, I could allow my mind to kind of just flow. And sometimes it allows you to think through some of those thoughts of, all right, I've overcome this, I've overcome that.
Yeah.
I can do all these other things.
When it comes to accessibility, from your from where you sit, like, how is Florida doing? State parks, trails?
So I think there are quite a few places that are really trying to make some improvements. There's a few different parks and a few different areas that are really working on having power chairs that can take you on hiking trails. There's a couple of those. A couple of the beaches now have beach wheelchairs that can be used with the mats that work to roll the chair down to the water. But I also think we still have such a long way to go.
Yeah.
I wish that it was more readily available, that every state park, every national park had accessible features.
Yeah. What's one of your biggest pet peeves when it comes to accessibility?
One of my biggest pet peeves is when a place says they're accessible and they're really not. And I think that's part of the issue. One of the places that we've been to somewhat recently, their trail was accessible, but it was all gravel. So it might have been accessible to a power chair.
That's a relative term, right? Accessible to what?
Who?
To who?
Right. It was not accessible for a manual chair. It was a lot of work.
Yeah.
A lot of work. So I think redefining that term accessible, because unfortunately, handicapped people depend on, if you say your restaurant is accessible, or you say this trail is accessible, or this park is accessible, they depend on that.
Yeah.
And when they find out that, okay, well, it's accessible if you have XYZ,
Right.
but not accessible for all, it becomes a burden.
My mom has always told me, like, you always adapt. You've always been very good. I'm a third child. I've always adapted, and I'm trying to teach my kids about that word. And so I just love that that's a part of what you guys are doing, because adapting means something's not going your way.
Yeah.
And you have to change and you have to modify.
Adapting is hard.
It is. We like being comfortable.
It means conceding maybe to something, right?
It does. And I think there's varying degrees of that adapt. There have been things that we have found that it's like, okay, my adapt in this moment is I know that I just can't do that.
Can't do that.
And I have to adapt to the fact that I still want my husband and my kids to go do something. So, we were on a trip. I had to adapt to the fact that I could not go ziplining and go to the waterfall with them.
Yeah.
And that adapt is just as hard as the adapt of, okay, I'm going to get out and do accessible surfing. They're two extremes, but they're both adapting, and I think that's where we have to get out of that comfortable space and find that little bit of uncomfortableness.
In your mind, do you have a darkest moment?
I would say that the darkest moment for me in all of this was the bladder and bowel issue. I had some very embarrassing moments. Very embarrassing moments. I had to take a class when I was in rehab. That was difficult.
Yeah. A class on how to deal with that.
A class on how to deal with that.
Yeah.
So one of the things that comes with having an SCI is that, or a spinal cord injury, is that most don't get that back. And they have to learn how to adapt and deal. And for me, that was one of the most mortifying thoughts that could have entered my mind.
Yeah.
And it may not seem like out of everything that should be the lowest point, but it made me feel physically ill. The thought that, like, I don't have control over this.
Yeah.
That for me was probably some of the lowest, darkest moments were in that.
Yeah.
Which I am thankful that I do not have any of those issues anymore, and I'm good and I'm fine. But my lowest, darkest moments were definitely revolved in that. I think it was more haunting than the "am I going to walk again" thought.
Wow.
I think at the end of the day, it was, I think I could have dealt with the never walk again as long as I can manage my bowels and bladder.
Yeah.
I really think that if I had to exchange one for the other, I would have definitely chosen this side over walking again, 100%. Because it was just that, it put you in such a dark place. It put me in such a, I can never leave my house. I can never go anywhere. I can't do anything because you never know.
Yeah. Through all this, where were you finding comfort? Where did that come from?
I think some of that comfort just came from the faith that we have too. This belief that, like, you know, God only gives you what you can handle.
Yeah.
You know, my church family became very important. They rallied around my children. Our priest definitely rallied around Gabe and I and just gave us that support. But I think at the end of the day, it really came down to the faith that we had personally in this belief that, you know, God is there. At the end of the day, God is there for you. And you just have to believe that there's good on the other side.
Sunshine Junkie is a production of Crawford Entertainment